Welcome to this training session, online training program on managing funded research for the SGCI 2 program. So just to welcome you all, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all on to this online training program on managing funded research. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all our participants who have joined us from across Africa. Your presence here today underscore your commitment to advancing research management on the continent, and we're excited to have you all with us. The Managing Funded Research Training Program is specifically designed to address the critical needs of research managers across Africa. Over the next 2 days, we will be exploring crucial areas in research management, from understanding the funding landscape and developing competitive proposal to effectively managing funded projects and exploring innovative funding. This program will equip you with valuable insight into identifying funding opportunities, aligning your research goals with funders' priorities, and strengthening your capacity to manage complex projects. As research managers and administrators, mastering these skills is essential to secure and manage sustainable funding and building long-term success for your institutions. The facilitators will share practical skills and strategies for writing compelling funding proposals, which have a greater chance of success in securing external funding. In addition, they will offer guidance on how to meet key requirements for managing external funding successfully, ensuring both compliance and accountability. The program will be delivered over 2 half-day morning sessions. Today, we will focus on understanding funding opportunities and essentials of proposal development. Tomorrow, we will shift our focus to managing funding projects, the innovation application process, and strategies for funding sustainable partnerships. I encourage you to actively engage with the content, ask questions, and participate in the interactive workshops. We are confident that the insights gained here will empower you to enhance your research management practices and contribute to the broader development of research infrastructure and innovation capacity across African universities. Once again, welcome. I look forward to all our shared learning and discussions over the course of the training. Now, without further ado, let us start with the first session. Before we start, I also want to thank SARIMA for managing and hosting this training program. I mean, the work behind the scenes, Armand, Ross, Kim, Zimasa, yeah, they work hard to put this training program together. So, as I said, without further ado, we'll start with the first session, and obviously that will be me. I'm just trying to share my screen. Okay. No, that's the wrong one. Sorry. This. Okay, hopefully you can all see the screen, my screen.
We cannot.
You cannot.
No.
What's going on? Let me just go out here. Try again. Share screen. Let me just get my presentation. There are too many things here. On my, can share screen again. See it now?
Yes, I can see it now. You can go to presenter mode to make it full screen, please.
Okay. Success.
It's
think
still
when
not full screen on my side. Are you perhaps using two screens?
yes. Let me close my I'm using two.
Close everything else and just keep that one screen active, Yolanda.
What do you mean everything else?
Close anything else that you've got open on your
Okay.
laptop. Like if you've got Outlook or other tabs open, close everything down so that you just have the particular file open, and then it should be easier to select which screen you're sharing.
Okay. Let me take out my Can you see the one screen now?
No, stop sharing and share again. Did you unplug your one screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so stop sharing and just share it again, and then it should be fine.
I didn't expect that. Usually if I just open my laptop. So is it better?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully things will from here onwards. Okay, we I have a few minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to give an overview of SARIMA. So as we said, this is this online training course is about managing funded research. This is me, just a short biography. I'm not going to go into details about it. You can just read it on your program. So SARIMA is a membership organization for research and innovation management community in SADC, and it was established in 2002. It's a platform for research and innovation management community in the public and private sector. Our aims then is to promote and facilitate best practices in research and innovation management, and to strengthen the research and innovation system to support regional socioeconomic development. So our target audience are all of you in the room. That is research and innovation managers, technology transfer practitioners, researchers, and project managers. Our key stakeholders are individuals and organizations that facilitate and support and promote research and innovation. And those are our universities, investors, incubators, accelerators, IB firms, research units, science councils, science granting councils, etc. Okay, so what are our SARIMA strategic objective? It is to develop the discipline of research and innovation management, including professional development and promotion of best practices. To foster and coordinate activities related to research and innovation management, both locally, nationally, and at an international level. And it is to create a climate conducive to research and innovation at institutional and national level, and to seek out and establish mutually beneficial links with other associations, organizations with similar and related areas of activities or objectives nationally and internationally. So if we look at the structure of SARIMA, we have volunteers. These are people that are nominated and elected, which is the president, a committee of 10 members. We've got our president-elect, our past president, which sits on the executive, the vice president for innovation and tech transfer, the vice president for research management, and vice president for Africa engagements. Then the operations of research management is done by this group of people, and you can see some of them are on a full-time basis and others are on a part-time basis. So what are the SARIMA activities? If you're interested in knowing about SARIMA, we provide training and professionalization to our members. So for example, courses, mentorship, exchanges, webinars, online programs, etc., etc. We provide networks and exchanges. We have networks with the SARIMA in West Africa, SARIMA in East Africa, Nkura, African Commonwealth Universities, ARMA, ATTP, INOMS, etc. And we have also local and international exchange programs. Our conference and forums, we have an annual conference. This year, the conference will be in Mozambique, at the beginning of September. We have many information guides and manuals on our website if you want to go there and learn about research management, tech transfer. There's many guides on our webpage. Online information resources, newsletters, skills register, and online forums, networks, and sharing experiences. We also have platforms for advocacy or awareness, and this is important for research and innovation management, institutional management, and policymakers. We also look at many different policies that are affecting research and innovation, and we have a few communities of practices. As I said, all this information you will find on our webpage. So the courses that we offer, I'm not going to go into detail. I think this will be shared, but we have innovation and tech transfer courses. Under these, we have the basics of technology transfer and setting up TT functions in your institutions. We have courses on intellectual property, the basics of intellectual property. We're looking at courses in research impact, which is very important these days in funding applications. And then we have other courses in commercialization of biosciences, innovation, marketing, university, IP, supporting researchers, research to commercialization, basics of IP and TTT for administrators, IP management, institutional consulting services, what to do, how to do, and why to do that. Okay, why is this jumping now? Under research management, that is a tech transfer that we just looked at it, but under research management, we have an online course, Basic Principles of Research Management. We have bioethics in human research, and we have research management courses, clinical related courses. We have clinical trial coordination, data management, and project risk management. As I said, we can just go to our website and all these courses will be there, and if you want to know more about it. So on professionalization, I mean, we have found that we as research administrators and managers, need to be professionalized, and SARIMA offer that through the IPRC, which will do the professionalization. So we have 3 levels of professionalization, both for research managers, RM, and for tech transfer officers. So at the early stage, we have early career stage. If you're in 1 to 3 years in your research in this career, we offer the research administrative status or the candidate RCTP status. Mid-career research management status, and when you're more than 5 years, like me, 20 years in this sector, that is you're in the established career, and that is senior research management professional statuses. Obviously, we provide training to show you how to get professionalization and the process of obtaining professionalization if you are interested. Then going on to how SARIMA operates. There's many projects that we have funded by many different funders. And in these projects, there are many different activities. So activities like conferences and forums, training, networking, and exchange and advocacies. So and out of that, we try to build capacity, form communities of practice, and obviously have role models. This then gives us some form because participating in these activities, we can then apply for a professional accreditation through our the capabilities that we through our training and the capacity that we develop within our members and those associated with SARIMA. We build robust institutional capabilities and enabling policy environment. What are we then? I mean, as we know, we are the people, the research managers, ensure that academics do efficient and impactful research. And obviously, when we talk about innovation and tech transfer, creating new products and services, and we help the academic community to achieve those. And then if those are achieved, we will have a social and economic impact, improve livelihoods and economic growth. So if you have SARIMA membership, which is either WARIMA membership or IRIMA membership in East Africa, you've got discount on all events, annual conferences and training courses, access to specialized courses to meet institutional needs, access to training materials, maybe customized to your context, access to SARIMA networks of regional and international partners, regional and international facilitators and trainers, opportunity for professionalization for research and innovation management career, access to international opportunities, that is mobility, exchanges, mentorships, funds, access to research and innovation information, that is to measure institutional performance, and access to communities of practices in research and innovation management. Our upcoming event, we have a COP. Okay, we do have the annual conference in Mozambique at the first week in September, but we also have the COP Community of Practice Research Ethics webinar, and this webinar will be on biosafety and environmental science training. If you're interested, you can also get more information on that. So our objectives for this workshop is, if you've read the introduction or the program, the objectives are spelled out there. So it is to enhance understanding of funding landscape. It is to equip participants with knowledge to identify and navigate major funding sources and opportunities, ensure alignment with their research goals. It is to develop skills in proposal writing, to provide practical guidance on crafting compelling and competitive proposals that meet the requirements of various funding bodies. It is to strengthen project management competencies. It is to teach essential skills in managing funded research projects, including financial accountability, ethics, compliance, and to ensure projects' success. It is to foster strategies for applying for innovation funding and building sustainable research initiatives that contribute to long-term institutional growth. And it's to promote effective partnerships and impact communication, empower participants to build strong collaborations and effectively communicate the impact of the research to enhance visibility and attract diverse funding streams. Okay, that is the end of my presentation talking about SARIMA. We will then I think I'm good for time. It was yeah, I was supposed to, is there any questions? Let's take questions on SARIMA. If you want any clarity, maybe we can talk about that on the issues that I've mentioned, and there's other people in the team, SARIMA team on the call in this workshop that can also provide more clarity. Yeah, so we after the questions, we've got 5 minutes for questions, and the next speaker then will present or start with their presentation. Cass has just posted and said you can also the link, the URL for SARIMA. So please, if you are interested, just go there and just read about our organization. Let me just go to the program. Okay, any questions? Okay, so if there's no questions, then maybe the next person on the program is Jean-Pierre, and he will talk about research management professional recognition through International Professional Recognition Council. Okay, thanks, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Yolanda, for setting the stage. It is amazing. So good morning again, everyone. It is really a great pleasure to be at this gathering. I can see around 200 persons from across Africa and probably from across the globe to speak about research administration and research management, which is really very great and encouraging. So while I share my screen, may I thank colleagues from SARIMA and the IPRC, who gives me the opportunity to talk about research management recognition through the IPRC. In slide modes, and here we go. Great. Somebody confirm that you can see my screen?
We can see it, Jean-Pierre.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to talk about research management professional recognition through the IPRC. IPRC is the International Professional Recognition Council. So before getting into the gist of the matter, let's see the context. We are Africans, and when you see these images, you know that research and innovation are the pillar for the development of our humanity. If we don't do research, if we are not innovating, we will remain at the back. Because from the first image of agriculture to the last one, you can see the progress. And this is mainly because some people are working hard to innovate. But what do we see on our continent? We are about 18.3% of the global population. Fortunately, we dedicate only 1%. We have only 1% of, we contribute to 1% of research output globally, which is sad. And the research funding are below expectation. Most of the money we are managing come from donors from Europe, America, and other continents. And most, it's even sadder because governance issues, we know we are facing governance issues in many countries, in many institutions in Sub-Saharan Africa. So SARIMA, in collaboration with the African RIMAs, are boosting the professionalization of research management because we research managers have a big role to play to streamline the research ecosystem for our research to bear more fruit. So you can see on this map, we are represented across Africa. We have SARIMA in South Africa, WARIMA here in West Africa, in Central Africa as well, and in Eastern Africa. We have research management associations. So we are struggling to promote the profession so that our research can bear fruit. So the IPRC, which is which is our promoter, let me say it this way, is an autonomous body composed of experienced research managers who represent the African and international research management community. And we work very closely with all the RIMAs. And the Secretariat is currently hosted by SARIMA. And thank you, SARIMA, for the great work you are doing. And you've been supporting WARIMA, and we are coming up as well as the West African Research Management Community. So the key areas of work of IPRC are the advocacy for the advancement and promotion of research management as a profession, and also for the IPRC itself to be known globally. We also, as Yolanda said, we endorse training. We allocate training points to research management training events for the purpose of continuing education. So if you want to apply for a professional recognition and you've done training, this can give you credit. And technical review also, we conduct peer review of application for professional recognition, and we confer professional status to applicants. So our members are part of the academia, from universities, research institutions, any entity that is involved in research are part of our memberships. And a member of the SARIMA Professional Recognition Committee, IPRC Secretariat. So we also bring some members, we can co-opt some members to become member of IPRC. So let me talk about the most important, which is the Professional Recognition Program. This Professional Recognition Program, it constitutes an award of professional status, which acknowledges the expertise and accomplishment of the research manager through the review of a portfolio of evidence. The portfolio of evidence is where you put all the evidence, anything that you've done that gives credit, that show that you are a research administrator, research manager. This is what we call a portfolio of evidence. So you must put them together in a file, and this would be helpful when you apply for professional recognition. So the professional portfolio of evidence will provide a sort of documented and substantiated proof. It is a proof because when you say you have money in your purse or wallet, you have to, take out some notes. It's a proof of competencies, experience that will help you in your application. So what are the types of professional designation? We do have 3 for the moment. At a lower level, or I will say at the beginner level, we have the research administration professional, which is RIP. So this is for people who have 1 to 3 years of experience in the profession. So if you are a beginner, you can apply for the beginner, level RMP, and then later you can apply for RMP, which is a research management professional, which recognizes mid-advanced career researchers, research managers, undergraduate qualification, a minimum of 3 years relevant work experience, or a minimum of 5 years relevant work experience without qualification. And the highest level is, for now, SRMP, which is Senior Research Management Professional. This one recognizes senior research managers who serve in leadership or strategic roles. It is for postgraduate qualification, a minimum of 5 years relevant work experience. So these are the 3 types of recognition. So you can target one of them, and maybe in the next publication, then you can apply. So we do have a very clear and rigorous application review process. So when you apply, a committee will screen your application, and if you're eligible, your application will be, will go through. If you are not, we'll tell you clearly what you have to improve and why you continue to improve yourself. You may come back to apply, and surely you'll be recognized. So why do you have to be recognized? If I asked myself this question a few years ago, and I can see the fruits. So research managers are key. We are key enablers, and we facilitate research, and our research can bear more impact if we really play our role in our institution. So increasingly specialized area of work with a significant breadth of knowledge, and professionalization of research management is also a global trend. So if you want to be recognized internationally as a research manager, as a professional, it's important to really apply for one of these recognitions. So you have to show competence, affirm standing. It's also a marker of career progression. So there is a lot to gain when you have a recognition. So I really encourage you to follow this 2-day training carefully. And if you are not yet a recognized person, please get ready and apply for the new session, the next session. So the most important for me is this: how to apply. Some people wrote to me and said, "Oh, I have some issues to apply." And I asked them, "Did you go to the website?" Yes, I went to the website. So the step 1, you go to our website, and then you click and you go to professional recognition. The most important, I say it again, the most important is step 2. Read the proposal between the lines very carefully, in detail, please, in detail, so that you know exactly what are requested. And when you do that, then you can put in place all your portfolio of evidence in a file. This is my own strategy. On my computer, I have a file which I call POA. So whatever I do, I take my certificate, I put it there. Which certificate did I have before? I took them and I put them there. So the day I'm going to apply, it is easy because some people say, oh, I did this training with this organization, and then you have to send an email, please send me a certificate. It is really worrisome. So please gather all your proof in one place on your computer. This will be very helpful. And then you draft very carefully, you review, and send your application to friends to read. For people like us, we are not native English speakers. So when you write something, you want to make sure there are no, not big mistakes. So you can give it to somebody to proofread it and help you correct. And then you submit your application. If you do that in a few weeks, then you'll have your feedback, and certainly you'll be awarded your professional status. So you have information on the screen. We'll share this with you. When there is a current call, you'll have the information. Everything is there. Professional recognition brochure in English, French, and Portuguese. You can read those to get ready. You can browse to our website. You see, all the fundamentals of research. We have a lot of documents there which you can read to get prepared. And you also have the previous person who have been recognized on this website. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to be brief to give the opportunity to the trainers to really tackle the gist of the issue, which is the training itself. But I want to encourage you to really get ready for this professional recognition. And I want to thank all our partners, SARIMA, IPRC, WARIMA, which I belong to, Essence, WHOTDR. And I want to stop here by saying thank you again for listening. Oh, I did not put my camera on. So for you to see me, I forgot to put it on. So if you have questions, please, you go ahead. I think I'm good for the timing. I had 10 minutes.
There's a question posted in the chat with regard to if there's an application fee.
Okay. Oh, if you have a question, we have so many messages. Can you please read it for me, please? Or
Yes.
Ahead.
Kes, can you read the questions? I can't see it. I'm not on.
Okay. Let it browse and see. We have plenty of messages.
So there was a question. Maybe we can just ask people if we can just limit the chat to either sharing of info or questions, because I think that will help us to discern the questions easily. There was a question with regard to if there's an application fee related to the IPRC process.
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. There is a fee. There is a fee, please. So see, my camera is not down. I'm gonna see me. Oh, sorry. Let me stop it because it's a mess. So there is a fee applied to the application, and 3 different level of fees. For the research administration fee, you have your application. You have a fee for RMP as well, and for SRMP. So when you go on the website, all the details are there. But let me assure you that it is not too expensive. This is affordable because we aim to promote the profession. So this is really affordable. And if you are doing a great job in your organization, you can have a sponsorship from your leadership. So yeah, this is manageable.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jean-Pierre. We're just trying to stick to time. I think we, question and answer sessions, Cass will probably note some of those questions that she can maybe just, touch on and try and answer in that final session. Okay.
Yolanda, I'm going to need to be driving soon, so I'm going to be listening in, but I'm going to leave you to monitor the chat as the facilitator. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, guys. The next facilitator is Tanya Holmes Watts, and she's going to talk about understanding funding research. Research funding, understanding research funding. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Thank you to our SARIMA colleagues. Welcome. Everyone on the chat. I see we've got on the workshop session, I see we've got quite a number of colleagues all over from Africa, the African continent. It is wonderful to be in your presence, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you some thoughts on understanding funded research. My name, as Yolanda says, is Tanya Holmes Watts. I am a past SARIMA committee member as well. I'm also recognized as a research management professional. I got recognition earlier this year. I hold a PhD from Stellenbosch University in science and technology research. And like all of you, I aspire to become a better version of a research support staff member when I joined university when I was 29 years old. So it's been a number of years that I've worked in this research management space, and I have been guided and really imparted through SARIMA and the activities that they offer throughout my career journey. So I really want to encourage you to make use of the opportunities that is out there through the SARIMA trainings and activities. Please do that. It will really enhance your own career trajectory. I just want to check if my screen sharing is in order.
Hi, Tanya, please just put it in presenter mode.
Now you're going to have to help me. I've got it in a PDF format here.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
But it's big enough, it's blown up sufficient. I'm just going to see how it looks when I move to, just now has to work with me. There we go. That should work. So if I use the arrows, let me just test.
Tanya, the previous, the way you had it before was better.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
let's make that bigger.
Yeah.
See.
A little bit more, 100%.
100%.
Let's see.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sure. Okay, colleagues, so I'm going to be talking about understanding funded research, and this is information compiled as a really a collective effort. And so this is not all there is to understanding funded research. I must say there is a lot. We can learn from you, you can learn from us. So this is not an exhausted list. But what we're going to present is just a brief overview, and over the next two mornings, you will get variations across what the program elements. But today, we're just going to overall focus on understanding the research enterprise. And perhaps at this point, I also wanted to mention, Yolanda said earlier when she started, she may be too old for these things. That's why initially things didn't want to work. It was a prolonged process to get things started. I differ with that. I think the more effective you get in your role, the more work is allocated to you, and then you are a little bit all over the place. So I just wanted to say to you, Landa, on that note. And then Jean-Pierre, I am so encouraged by your presentation. It was awesome. I am very passionate about what is happening on the African continent, particularly probably also because my husband is from South Sudan. And so, yeah, it's very close to my heart. So colleagues, let's stick to what we're here for. So generally, if we think about the gaining a better understanding about funded research, we want to cover a few aspects. We want to find out what are the most challenging, what do you consider to be most challenging in obtaining funding for research? And I'm sure that you guys can think of a number of challenges that you can put on the table. If there's an opportunity and you like to put it in the chat, think about that question. What do you consider to be the biggest challenge for obtaining research funding in your area of work or in your area where you are occupied? Because one thing is sure, there are many role players involved in this endeavor of obtaining research funding. And because of the different role players, it's so important. Your role as a support to the research is such a key role.
Sorry, Tanya.
So today we're going to look. Yes.
Tanya, sorry to interject. They said it's better at 75% than 100%. Sorry that I have to now. Yeah, can you just maybe change it to 0? Is that better, participants?
85?
Okay, leave it at 85 then. Thanks. I hope you can see the slides.
Yeah, I can see. Okay, colleagues, so I'm going to talk. So I'm saying that basically in summary, what we want to find out is we have to consider what is our main challenges. And then we have to find out what can we do in our respective roles, or how can we approach this so that we can bridge those challenges. So I'm going to very briefly talk about the research value chain, the importance of us to understand the ecosystem.
Sorry to interject again. They said 75% is better. They can't see they can only see a portion of the slide. Okay. Leave it at 75 then. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Just my thought pattern was there. Okay. Are we good? Alrighty. So as I said, there are many challenges in obtaining research funding. We have lots of role players involved. We ourselves, us and you yourselves, we are all role players. We have researchers with whom we partner. We are based within institutions, and all of us must work together to harness and leverage the best we can get out of the research enterprise to make sure that we move towards the goals we have, and that we kind of navigate all the role players' interests so that we achieve our objectives, okay, and provide the deliverables that are set for us to do. So we're gonna, the presentation is, you will see it's 42 slides. You'll have a copy of it, but I'm just gonna go through it. You will see which parts you'd like to focus on that you can go back to later on. So mainly we look at what generally consists of the research value chain and how that is important for the ecosystem, for us to get a better understanding about funded research. Because I generally feel, because we have all the challenges that we are aware of, we have all these challenges, but as soon as we can dot them down, we can capture, we know what the problems are. It's not rocket science. We know that funding is scarce. We know all the challenges that goes to not having a diverse funding base. Government funding is not sufficient. Capacity issues, all of those are the initial problems with funding. But it's not just obtaining funding. It is managing the funding and ensuring that you comply with the funders, and also to ensure that you work towards not just compliance, but excelling in meeting the goals that was set initially. So there is a whole lot of things to consider. We will go through the landscape in brief. We will go through items of how to improve your proposal writing if you are supporting researchers to write, or if you are involved in proposal writing yourself. We will look at tools. We will look at resources that you can go into. There's a lot of artificial intelligence tools and out there as well now of late that you could also look into. And obviously all the resources available through the Science Granting Council initiative and all other similar organizations. You can also go and visit their websites and have a look there as well. But let's look at, for me personally, I feel, generally speaking, if you think about understanding funded research, the better understanding we have of the ecosystem, the better we understand the role players and the interests that they have, the better we can equip ourselves and align ourselves to meet those expectations, and then work better in partnership with them to gain a mutual a beneficial outcome and walk a path together in partnership. So it's about research, value chain, understanding it. It's about stakeholder base and managing interests. We sometimes narrowly look at the circle where we think of research as an idea, and then there is an acquirement of funding, you manage the process, and you provide a report to say what you did with the funding. But the research value chain is much more than that. It is further down, towards product development, the innovation side, the commercialization side, the dissemination of research, and that all of those impact on whether you'll receive funding again, or to what extent the partnership will continue. And obviously it depends on what kind of funding. Grant funding is considered softer money. Contract funding is more harder compliance issues. So it really depends on what kind of funding. If it's government funding, if it's philanthropy, obtainment of funding through philanthropy initiatives, or it really depends on what you're working with. And all of those different pots of funding that you can tap into has got their own, obviously, requirements and ways of dealing with it. So let's just go through these ones. So the workshop objectives today is as communicated. We'll try to adhere to all those. And the desired outcomes and the impact is really up to you. How much you're going to get out of it is really whether you're going to, upon what you've learned and try to gain a better insight. It's really going to be up to you. I think these opportunities provide you information, but unless you prioritize it and act on what you've learned, that will determine to what extent you will move forward into what you want to accomplish. There are lots of funding opportunities for not just getting an understanding of all the funding bases, but if you want to think more systemically of where can I get funding for research? How can I obtain? What are the levels, the macro levels, the micro levels of societal engagements where I can opt to look at funding, either to partner with them or to engage with them. These are vast. So you could look at the ones that screen there locally. There are numerous ones. Many of you are very familiar with these. There are local ones, regional ones, international ones of different kinds. Research funding is given through contractual agreements, through memorandum of understandings, like I said, through all kinds of partnerships. And it's always where there are more than one party that has a similar goal or similar aims and objectives, and they want to partner to work towards those goals. But obviously, the expectations, there are expectations and there are realities that we are dealing with. Many of you are familiar with these. I've mentioned, and maybe some of these were on your list of challenges. There's limited government resources, high competition, weak institutional support perhaps, or cultures, or an overemphasis on a certain type of research. Maybe your institution focuses more on applied research, maybe your focus is on basic research, and that is why you are limited to reach out where those kinds of research is supported. So there are all kinds of realities to consider as well. The same, you can go on, you can further, these are all part of things to consider as well. To what extent do you have potential for capacity development? Do you have the capacity in your institution to engage in certain types of research? To what extent would they need you to have collaborative partners of different spheres of society for you to even partake in that research? And many times also you have to think about, if you do take on funding, to what extent to what extent and in what form and nature does the research need to be disseminated at the end of the day? And how are you capable within your institution to adhere to those kinds of expectations? There are many others, and I think we all know the value of external funding. I asked, what are your thoughts? Because, like I said, the list is not exhaustive. The reason why we need funding, we need to broaden our funding bases, is just very important. We have to have a broader stakeholder base that we engage. We want to advance scientific knowledge. We want to foster innovation, and not just technological innovation. On the African continent, we want to foster social innovation. We want to innovate in every way, sphere possible. There's actually a very interesting article I got on the different impacts that research reaches. Environmental impact, cultural impact, economic, social. It's so interesting. So they are, in the bigger scheme of things, when you think about research funding, one always has to understand that although there's a systemic process, it is individuals, either the researcher based in an institution and us as support staff based in an institution supporting the institution. The institution is part of a bigger ecosystem. The institution is based within a community. The community is based within a country. The country nationally has their own research goals and national priorities. And obviously, each country is different on the African continent. Each country has got its own contextual specificity in terms of what are priority areas to fund research in, and to what priority areas to partner with others for what type of research that is imperative for that country's goals. And the country, obviously, countries want to work with other countries. So it's this kind of ecosystem that you have to kind of have a broader understanding, a more comprehensive understanding of your role. And the bit that we do in our respective roles, it affects all the bigger area as well. So your role is not insignificant. It is very, very crucial. And if you understand it in that way, in line with the systemic nature of the research enterprise, it just makes you so excited. You just want to do more. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go a bit faster because I'm mindful of time. But as I said, you'll have the slides and you'll be able to go back. So on the issue of writing research proposals, I think many of you will be very familiar with these ones, because you would be in a position where you either quality assure research proposals, or you have to help your colleagues write research proposals, or you have to assess research proposals to determine who gets money, who doesn't get money, depending on your role. So I'm just going to very quickly go, there are fundamental things that we have to check There are certain things we're always learning. But in terms of proposals, writing, the writing is crucial. How we write, having a comprehensive understanding of the field in which you are writing, being thorough, being, detailed in your proposals, plan and provide support for the things that you are asking, and a rationale and a reasoning for why you're asking certain things. I'm going to have to go a bit quicker here. So these are all things that we would be familiar with. Okay, you have to have a right mindset, do your homework up front, use your your terminology, speak to the funder, and consult all the time. So the research funding cycle, generally, it starts with an idea. You go and align it with where funding is advertised either, or you make a proposal if you know that some area is a priority and there's available funding for it. There is a general funding cycle that I've alluded to earlier as well. One thing we know about obtaining research funding, competition is fierce. There are varied sources of research funding that we've said, whether it's government agency funding, corporate funding, trust foundations, or internal to your institution, whether it's donations or grants or research contracts. There's quite a number of them. Okay, so I'm just going to go a bit quicker because I want to just get to the other parts. So if you want to find out granting funding, I mean, you can go to your local, to your national agencies. Like if you have a national funding agency, like here in South Africa, we've got the National Research Foundation. In your country, you will have a similar one. If you have professional associations, or you can just do search engines, your normal search engines, you can look at even word of mouth. If you have colleagues in your area of research that you know is doing certain work, you can even have a look at that. But generally, there are normally certain checklists that a person could really literally tick off. If you have a specific funding, research funding that you have obtained, that you're managing, that you are checking, are you doing your reporting well? If it's time for reporting, or if you are pitching for funding, you check your eligibility. If you're pitching for funding, you're checking if you are matching, what you want to do or what your researchers want to do with that, what the funder is interested in, and all those kinds of things. So you would check the internal, the eligibility criteria, and I'm sure many of you are doing a lot of that as well. That's very important when you are looking at proposals, when you're managing the process. Okay, I think this is just an additional articulation of finding a good match, learning about the funder, talk the funder's language, and maybe look at previous projects that the funder have supported is also good. Okay, so these are just furthermore on that, how to be more detailed, check what the requirements are, what the compliances are, the reporting guidelines, and whether the systems and processes that you have available at your institution are able to provide the type of deliverables that the funder requires. Okay. So time for writing is crucial. Don't rush the proposal. Make sure you have sufficient time. That also, and ensure that you show respect to the funder by adhering to the deadlines, timelines, and all of those. Play to the strengths of your institution is very important. We've spoken about the checklist for requirements, but playing to the strengths of your institution is very important. So that's why providing visibility on things that research projects that you are doing well, all kinds of awards, recognition that your institution is engaged in or has obtained. Make it visible, put it on your websites, put it in blurbs, send it through, make newsletters, whatever it is. That's very important because it sells the strengths of your institution as well. These are, again, on persuading your reader. You know, many of you may be familiar if you've done your own studies or you've written proposals yourself. You know, you have to persuade the reader, you have to persuade your funder, convince them that they should give the money to you instead of anybody else. And these are some of the ways that you can go about it. So we all know about the SMART objectives, yeah? So you guys can go and have a look again, go through, it takes a bit of practice. So the more we do it, the better we get at it. So SMART objectives is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, so that you don't oversell and then you can't deliver. So that is very important as well. Calculate the cost. You want to do your costing well. There was a time when we did full costing, and that's also very important. It depends on your context. Yeah. So writing is very, very important. We can say a lot about writing, but you know, once we prepare any proposal for funding and we're competing with others, the funder don't know you. The funder may not be familiar with you. And all the funder has to go on is what you present them on the paper. So we can't overemphasize the importance of the writing. Yeah, you can have a look at the 7 steps to writing a winning proposal. Can have a look at that in your own time as well. Using logic models is a good idea because it gives you, or you can advise your researchers to use this logic model to provide a more systematic way of thinking through, conceptualizing your idea or seeing whether all the parts fit together. There are many resources like this. You can use the theory of change as you work through your, and there are many other tools that one could use. This is very useful because it also provides an increased quality to the substance of the proposal that you're making. So you could make sure that you, in a comprehensive way, provide detail on all the very key elements that needs to be in a proposal. And what will guide you is the call for the funding. So the call guides you, and you will then use these kinds of tools, the logic model or the theory of change model, to put your proposal together and ensure that all the parts are quite quality driven. So these are just more at the researcher level, and also you as a support staff, in your role as a support staff, these are very important aspects to consider as well. When you want to ensure that you position your proposal to the funder to make them see the necessity for selecting you rather than anybody else to fund. Okay, these are some of the aspects you can consider at institutional level. I've made reference to it a bit earlier. You want to develop appropriate funder databases for yourself so that you don't have to do it over and over again, but you can go back and forward. You want to ensure that you have a strong research and financial management support system in place. We spoke about visibility, demonstrate impact, the impact that it will have, and focus on the reputation among our funders and all stakeholders alike. Then you can think about funding at the national level. I've kind of tried to articulate to you, it's a system. So at individual level, institutional level, at the national level, these are also things to consider. more national level things to consider? Okay. Yeah. Some of these things will be more specific to your context. So please do go through it. Further tips for funders. You will be surprised how happy funders are when you thank them. You know, but nowadays, many funders are very pedantic about monitoring and evaluation. So if you put monitoring and evaluation systems or mechanisms in your proposal to show that you will monitor and you will check, that is very favorably assessed. And yeah, I mean, these are some of the things you could consider as well. Some of the mistakes that you may want to consider avoiding, you know, sometimes we have to think of ourselves in a different way, think of an aspect in a different way, so that it helps us better to safeguard us from easy pitfalls. If you'd like to find out more, I think my time is running out now, but if you'd like to know more about opportunities where you could engage or you could reach out and find out more about different kinds of funding, these are just a list that you could consult. You could have a look, go read on their websites and see. Like I said, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just very brief. But there are many others that you may want to more locally in your area, more regionally, perhaps. Yeah, so that's just a list. And on that note, I think at this point I'll have to say thank you because I think I'm 10 minutes into time. That's where I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tanya, for that information. I'm sure, I mean, these are detailed processes, and I think you, on your slides, they are very detailed, you know, on how to do how to apply for funding, how to, you know, what type of funders to approach, the priorities of funding, of funders, aligned to your research proposal, how to write the proposal. So I just want to talk just to let the participants know that when we talk about research management and funded research, there's some kind of overlap between our presentations because we, you know, looking at just explaining the funding landscape and then going deeper into each aspects of the funding processes or phases, you know, and that is what we will go do over the next 2 days. That there will be a lot of overlap and a lot of repeat, but we hopefully to make it clearer as we go along. Also, just as for the participants, I know most of you are for this is a training program for science grounding councils, and I'm not sure if researchers or research management professionals from universities and research institutes are here as well. But we will try to gear our talk as well to you working in the Science Grounding Council. I mean, myself, I worked there at the NRA for 12 years, so I have a good understanding of, you know, how Science Grounding Councils operate. And I mean, it's not that we really need to know, you know, how to write proposals. I mean, knowing how to write proposals is good then in assessing the proposals, because our responsibility at the Science Grounding Council is then looking at assessing, looking at how do we find priority areas, what is important, how do we put out a call for applications, how do we, you know, write up a call. So those are all the things that are important. So I'm going to slightly just change my presentation. Because I think there was some similar stuff that I had with Tanya, so but I will slightly differ, or you know, look at it from a different angle. So just excuse me if the background is just clear. I just had to like do slight adjustments. on my presentation, and these are the pre-award processes. So I'm going to start with first, let me just share my slides. Is something happening? I just see a blank. Oh,
Nothing
sorry
is
about
happening.
that. I shared the wrong screen. It seems to happen. I have opened it. Just close all these things. I'm just looking for my slide here. I'm going into share. Zimaza? Zimaza, you have your hand up? You're on mute. You're on mute. Zimaza, do you want to say something? You're still on mute.
Hi, Yolanda. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Thanks. No, as you were loading your presentation, I thought maybe if we could address a couple of questions that were raised for Tanya. I'm not sure if time would allow.
Okay. Okay. Tanya, are you still on the call?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm happy to take questions.
Let me.
Okay, so the first question, I think maybe it was a matter of maybe understanding. So the first question for apologies for mispronunciation of the name, but for Malaki, what does it mean when you say that there's a great number of wrong players in research management ecosystem? How can you describe a wrong player look like and their interest as well? May we confirm maybe you were saying role players?
Yes, I was saying role players.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just have two other questions. The other one is from Shumunya Araya. I think it's better to clarify budget and time template or share us the template material. Or I think maybe that's a comment. And then another question from Ayop from Dila University. Question is, why is everything related onto the funder's interest? Is it not possible to have found on mutual interest? Thanks, Tanya. You can respond to questions and comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Zamaza. On the role player one, I just wanted to say, there are many role players in the research funding game. You know, if you look from a perspective of the person writing the proposal generally, would be the researcher. If you are a support staff member and you are also in a position where you are writing proposals for funding on behalf of your institution, you are a role player because you want to become a recipient of a fund that is being advertised, and you're competing with other role players, other people who want the money. The funder is an important role player, but you as the person applying for the funding, whether you are in a researcher capacity that you're applying or a research support capacity that you're applying, you are all important role players. And I like the comment on mutual interest. It should be like that. Generally, it is just that the person having the money and the interest to meet their interest holds a higher weight. because they're the ones that are going to decide which projects they'll fund. You also a very important role player because you're applying, you want to become a recipient of it, but your interest would be a little bit lesser in weighing, because at that point when you're applying for the funding, you are applying it because your interest for acquiring financial support to do the research, it's from that perspective. I'm not sure if the weighing, it depends really on the type of funding you're applying for. It can be bilateral, it could be any kind of research, but you are quite right that there are mutual interests, and one would like to partner and write proposals or obtain funding where you know that all interests are considered. But obviously, yeah, at the time when the funding calls go out, the funders are the one that holds the banner. Then the issue of the last one was, just remind me again. That was the role players, and the last one was?
I think you've handled the role players and the one for mutual interest. I think it was a comment
Oh yeah,
on,
it was
on the aspect of clarifying budget through sharing of templates.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, I think that it really depends, because some funders would have online applications where you have to put your budgetary requests inside their particular template, so you are limited to what kinds of budget items you can ask for. Other times it's more open, where you can prepare your own budget and tell them these are the things that I would need, and they would then tell you, okay, we could do this or we could do that or whatever. So it really depends on the type of call. It varies, I'd say. I hope I've answered all of them. I thought there was something I missed, but if it comes up, I can always come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I think if there's any other questions, delegates are welcome to put them on the chat, and we see how we can respond to that. Thank you very much for your presentation and your responses to the questions and comments. Yolanda, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simasa. I'm not going to take the whole 30 minutes because I think we're going to, take some time, eat into our break time. So, but I'm just going to give an overview of pre-award processes. And as I said, I will probably talk about both at science grounding councils and at universities. So research funding is a tool to achieve your research goals. And do you know what your research goals are? So this is both applicable to universities, research administrators at academics or researchers at universities, and it is applicable to those working at science grounding councils. You have to understand, and as Tanya has alluded earlier, is that at the science grounding councils, there are goals that you have to achieve, research priorities that you have to achieve, right? Because most of these fundings either comes from government or it comes from international funding bodies, and they have certain priorities, whether it is to alleviate poverty, whether it is to look at innovative products, whether it is to looking at a societal impact. When they provide funding, they are trying to achieve a goal. And as one participant indicated that, these research priorities, if I have different research priorities than what the funding call indicates, how do I align it? Unfortunately, this is the name of the game. You have to just align it to, if you want to get funding for it, you need to align it to what the funder requires. So sometimes the funder do put out research priorities or research goals as a very broad indicator, and you can then try and fit it in. So if they talk about environmental impact, you can try and see if you can fit your research into those priorities. So it's not. I think they allow for that leeway where your research goals, can align to some of the priorities that they have put out, because that is the only funding that is the only projects that will fund. The minute you are misaligned, they could kick you out, you know, at the very beginning. They're not even going to look at your application. So again, looking at the funding strategies of both, and this is now both at because universities itself or research institutes itself, we also subaward. We also you know, have small research grants that we also ask our academics to apply for. The same as funders, right? Funders have funding, so and request applications from academics so that they can realize these priorities or their strategies. So when we talk about strategies here, it can be, you know, you have to look at what a fund. So as an institute, you have to look at the funding opportunities. You have to look at is it a strategy where you want to build partnerships? You know, in internationalization, when a call for internationalization is or for collaborative research is put out, you know, you have to look at how to build those partnerships between yourself and somebody else for which the call is put out for. Okay, then you look at how you're going to develop your proposal and what is the issues around submission. So so look at proposal development. If it's a investigator-led proposal, you with your small team, you can look at, okay, how will I go about start with my idea, and how will I develop this proposal with this research team involved. Usually research funding is not it is investigator-led. It is sometimes individualistic. It is sometimes just about basic and fundamental research. But the thing about these research proposals is that they allow for you to build capacity, right? So you have to have that element of of building capacity within your proposal, and when you look at the submission, how are you going to submit this application? So sometimes funders have a manual submission process, and sometimes funder has an online submission process. When it is a manual submission process, you have to look at what are the documents that is required for manual submission. Do I need a letter of support? Do I need the DVC support? In some institutions, they need VC support, the vice chancellor support, or the provost. So who are the people that I have to get support from, and what are the documents and the compliance documents that I have to submit with my proposal, right? So in the proposal development phase, or when you look at applying for a proposal, you have to look at the role players, the project. How am I going to divide the work packages? So what are the documentation that I need, that I have to submit? Who are the people in the university I have to submit to? What are the support letters? Because sometimes in partnerships you need the partner support letters. What is the process of submission? So all those things have to be considered. So it is not just you waking up today and next week there's a application submission. This is a planning. Some funders do not give people a lot of time to plan, but it is about planning. It is about, you know, even project managing how you're going to do your proposal, how you're going to develop your proposal, and how you're going to submit your proposal. Then obviously looking at your contracts, these are compliance issues, right? And these mostly happen in post-award. So will there be contract negotiations? Do I start talking to our legal department? You know, immediately looking at the budgeting of the application. You know, are there some elements where I have to where there's a co-funding aspect? You know, can I negotiate indirect cost, which is, you know, salaries, that is indirect, direct cost? Is there, you know, can I ask for what we call a fee for, you know, we call it Corey, I'm not getting the word now, but is there can I request a direct cost? What is the university policies around this? You know, so you have to understand the whole contracting aspect, because I know when academics or researchers, when they you know, when they apply for funding, it is they don't want to deal with these things, these legalese languages, these, you know, the legal aspects, you know, they just push it aside, and that affects then obviously how you're going to do the post-award management. So if you are not getting all these all your ducks in a row, it's going to be a problem, because it will affect then post-award, and it will affect how you're going to do your project. It will affect if you can access your funding. You have to understand how the university works, how the funder works, how can you negotiate with the funder, is there room for negotiations? So there's a lot of things that you have to consider when applying for funding. It's not just getting the money and go off into the sunset and do your fund and do your proposal. There's so many aspects around funding that you have to consider, and you have to adhere and comply to, not only on the funders compliance, but also the university policy and what they have put in place, because that can also limit and restrict you, right, in how you actually put your proposal together. So so these are, as I said, you know, it's a lot of things to consider. You can look at this slide if it's shared, and just look at, you know, things that you really have to think about. Just quickly talking about partnerships. When you do your collaborative or you're going to apply for collaborative funding, what I've realized is that people, because we just reviewed a partnership funding application here at my university, and I could see the partnership is not strong. You know, I mean, oh, you're going to do the analysis, and we will collect the data. Yeah, in Africa we collect the data, and we said because we don't have enough, we don't have the equipment to do this analysis. It's mostly that kind of partnerships that I see, and I saw it with, out of the 10 applications we reviewed, I saw 8 of those like that. And the question comes when we now, because we're the funder, the question comes in, what type of partnership is this? Is this just a partnership where a funder, you know, you request, you know, you're just going to send your samples there and they're going to analyze, and they, you know, what is the relationship? How is it equitable? Isn't it an equitable partnership? And when we look at the outputs and the outcomes of this partnership, is it and then they say the outcomes, we're going to have a journal publication in a high impact factor journal. Yeah, there will be some student exchange, but the plan for that is not clearly defined, right? And as we know, when we do post award as research administrators, when we look at post award, we can see this is just random things that is happening. You know, it's not planned. Research administrators, as well as people that are the research funder, when they look at the progress reports, you know, when you submit your progress reports, the plans that you have in your, if they plan to fund you, the plan that you have in your proposal, if it doesn't align to what is in your progress report, and if it's just random visits that you're going to do and spend 2 weeks with your collaborator, you know, and this, you know, it's not based on a solid partnership. So building partnership, maintaining partnership is a very complex issue, you know, and actually maintaining your voice in that partnership is it's very difficult. So what funders now look for when you write on an application is look at how strong that partnership is, right? Especially if it's a new partnership, right? If say there's a South African China call coming out, you know, now you're just a calling person who's writing an email, and the partnership hasn't been strengthened, or the foundation of for the partnership hasn't been strengthened. So this is what you have to work on as a researcher, But also when you are in a Science Grounding Council and you're putting out a call for collaborative research funding opportunities, it's also to look at, what was the basis, how is that partnership built, how was it maintained, and how is it strengthened? Because you are looking for long-term sustainability and not just for that specific project that happened over 2 years, 1 or 2 years. Okay, so there are so many strategies that you have to consider being an academic, a researcher, and working at the Science Grounding Council. But as well as research administrators, we also have to understand what is required so that we can also advise. We can advise our academics on what is lacking, and also obviously then to strengthen their research funding application. On the funder side, they can, when they write their feedback, and I've seen many feedbacks coming back. I mean, it doesn't say anything. It just says, oh, the scientific quality of the, it's fundable. Look at this methodology. Maybe you should, this is nothing about, because a funding application has so many different aspects to it, right? The feedback doesn't really help that much. It doesn't give, it just talks mostly about the scientific quality of the proposal rather than the other aspects around this proposal. So and it gives superficial feedback to academics and to us as research administrators at institutions of how then we can support the academics going forward. Okay, so obviously Tanya has alluded to this thing, is looking at how your funder thinks, right? And when you look at how your funder thinks, it's looking at first of all, reading this. I know the strategy documents and the frameworks is, it's not easy to read, but you can actually see through the calls that comes out of what actually is the direction or the priority areas for these funders. So you have to and funders are, especially funders in Science Grounding Councils in Africa. I think because funding is not readily available, we are sometimes guided by our international partners, especially people that wants to invest in research in Africa. So we take on this call, we take on these funding programs. And it takes us off some of our research priorities and adhere mostly to international funder research priorities. So this is what happens a lot. But as a researcher, you can gauge what your Science Grounding Council actually wants from you, right? You can look at the priority, read those documents, don't just go into the application blindly. I mean, I know that because the documents, you get bored of reading those documents, but don't just go into the application blindly and say, okay, I'm just going to put it, oh yeah, I've seen something about collaboration. Oh, I saw something about research outputs. Those are all the basic stuff, right? Read about, is this about the sustainable development goals? Is this alignment to those? Is this alignment to the research priorities of the country or of the funding agency? How do I shape and reshape my proposal? And is this proposal actually appropriate? A lot of time, you shouldn't be, responding to a call. Respond to the appropriate call. Respond to the call that is more aligned to you, and that will ensure better success. So we look at also an understanding of, and this is both for, let me just get every part of the presentation. This is as funders, we have, what are we funding? Are we funding basic research? Are we trying to fund basic fundamental research? Are we trying to fund applied research, translational research, or implementation? So and I can assure you, when the funder or the Science Grounding Council look at, especially as it goes through assessment into with Science Grounding Councils, they're not really sure of even if it's an innovation call, a call for the development of products and services, or the beginning of ideation, going into commercialization. They don't really clearly distinguish, right? What is this? What are the elements that they have to look into a proposal for, so that they can see what type of research the researcher is putting out, right? So so it's important to understand. So most of the time, what we found with science grounding councils and science councils, as you see, most of the funding is about basic into applied into implementation. It's more government and industries looking at that is mission-driven research. They want something out of it. If government puts out a call, they want something specific. If industry put out a call, they want a specific product, right? And these foundations and philanthropists, they usually put out calls for good, for the greater goods of society. And it's easy to link those calls, to link those calls to this SDG standard sustainable development goals. And also here you have to really, explain your impact. Is the impact a social impact and an environmental impact, a cultural impact, or a knowledge impact, right? So they, it's more showing impact and your pathway to impact that these foundations and philanthropists are interested in. Okay, so I've briefly touched on this. We are dealing with we are dealing with what our reality, what we are, where we are, right? What we are, how our institutions are constituted, what they want to do, what they how they, there's many policies, the regulatory environment around us. It's usually some, and as that just again about the chat in the comment in the chat was about the priorities, right? It's like, how do you fit your research into that round hole? How do you put that square box into that round hole, right? Sometimes, as we said, we want to do it, we want to force it in, right? This is what I said. It's not all calls that has to be applied for just because you're looking for funding. The more you align your proposal to that call, the better for you, right? So what we do is we are going to shape and reshape. Because if funding is, say for instance, if funding is more in environmental issues, sustainable environments, green economy, data science, these are the things that are coming out now. What do I have to do? How do I have to rethink about my research to actually fit it in? Can I do it? Like I'm more at a basic fundamental level, but how can I show even with that that I can, that there can be impact in the long run, right? In the future. Or when my research at the fundamental state, this basic fundamental research that I'm doing, where I'm looking at theories and changing in methodologies and stuff like that, will this then in the end create something, where other researchers will come along and create something, a process or a product or something very significant? Will it change the way my field, will I significantly impact in my knowledge area? So you have to look at your research and try and make it fit, if that is what you intend to do. So obviously, as I said, there's a goal. So your goal is to get funding, and that is just the reality of how funders operate. So just gathering your team, and these are all pre-award processes. So gathering the right team. I mean, the worst thing is, and we can see it here, is working or putting multidisciplinary funding. People talk about multidisciplinary. People cannot even work together. People cannot researchers or academics is difficult even if they work within the university, within their department, right? What about then establish partnerships like across, in other universities or regional partnerships, international partnerships? It's very difficult, but I mean, there is there's funding, right? There's money. So money should be your, access to the funding and the partnerships that need. So this has to drive you, the funding has to drive you to be able to create that strategic partnerships. And obviously you have to do the work, because to get partners is not just an easy thing, right? Or to work with people, there has to be trust, there has to be respect, there has to be some kind of mindset. There have to be a willingness, right? And obviously, if you see your partner is just using you, to get into the, saying I'm going to analyze your samples and to get into the high, write a high impact a journal, a paper to be published in a high impact factor journal. Look at their career, the selfishness of that. You have to be aware of this. You have to see how much you want to compromise. But I think looking at partnerships is having a compromise right at the beginning of your relationship. Expectations have to be discussed right at the beginning, right? And trying to manage that has to happen, because as we say, even as I said, multidisciplinary research these days is the buzzword, and trying to get varying disciplines to work together it's also very difficult. So I'm trying to just look at the time aspect. Usually there are many players, as Tanya said, many players within your institution, many players outside of your institution, many players, even the funders have bilaterals and multilaterals. And in your university, there's also different people. There's the library, there's ethics committees, there's finance, there's your strategic partnerships office. There's there's finance. There's people in the faculties, the administrators. So how these layers, all these different layers. And if you talk about collaborative funding relationships, there are even the partner research support officers that you have to interact with and have to build relationships with. So understanding this interconnected layers is very important, and building trust and respect within, when you navigate these layers is important, and it will ensure success. I mean, even funders, when they just put out a collaborative goal, they don't understand how difficult it is, these navigations, how to navigate this relationship with all these different players with different mindsets, with different personalities, right? And that should also be considered, because as they said, money is the driver, but to get that money, all these aspects, all these policies, regulations, regulatory frameworks, all of them have to be taken into consideration. So conceptualizing your proposal, when you start conceptualize, you have to look at the excellence of the proposal, the feasibility. Is this a feasible proposal? Is it going to have impact, right? So excellence is the science. Feasibility is, will this thing be done in the time frame that you have set, that the funder is going to. So if the funder is going to give you 2 or 3 years of funding, will this proposal be done, or what aspects of this project will be done on a third year, at the end of the third year or second year, right? And when we talk about that, because what we found with a lot of funding proposals or projects is that sometimes in the Science Granting Council, when they look at the projects, they will say, no, this is not feasible. This probably needs a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, right? the outcomes and the impact of this study is going to be in 10 years or 5 years. But you have to show that after 3 years, if this project ends, what will be your plan, right? You know it's not going to stop at 3 years, but what will be your plan? And you have to write that into your proposal beyond this. So the outcomes comes, or the impact at that moment in within nothing happens in the first year, but from the second to the third year, what are the steps? You have to indicate that clearly, and you have to show the funder that is actually what is going to happen. And beyond this, where are you going to get funding? What are your plans? How are you going to grow this project? What are your future plans beyond what the funder offers? Okay, then your proposal will have better success. Okay, then writing proposals, I'm not going to look at that, but it's just I'm not going to go into detail because Tanya is on her slides. There's a lot of detail, but don't look at. Yes, Ross, am I eating? Okay, okay, I'm nearly done. This is my second last slide. So writing proposals is, don't look the jargon, all the words, it must be concise, it must be clear. You must justify your choices. You must look at your budget. Tomorrow they will talk about budgets, and that will be a very interesting conversation. And yeah, you will learn about that. I'm not going to go into that, but just look at how you put your proposal together, and yeah, and I'm sure there will be success. And as we say, remember, no one size fits all. Contextualize and persevere. And that's the end of my. Sorry that I now had to eat into your break time. Is there any questions around this? Any comments?
Hi, Yolanda. Yes, we have a couple of questions and comments. I'm not sure how are we with time, so I'm not sure how many questions.
I think what we can do is maybe we can still have we will take the questions and see when we finish, and then we can just maybe look at the interactive and the questions answer session a bit. We can take some of that time off and make that a little bit shorter.
Okay, so I can go ahead and maybe read out some questions. Okay, so I'll just read the first 3 and maybe you can respond to those ones first. So these are from Mulatu. Apologies for the pronunciation. How to administrate budgets after funding, and what are the basic elements that considers preparation proposal for funders? Also, you also note some of these questions, you've also spoke to them. So some of the questions came before you touched on them. So the other one is from Jonas Ojela. How can we effectively align our research goals with the specific priorities and mission of potential funders to maximize our chances of securing funding? Those are the first 3. You can maybe respond to those first.
I think on budgeting, because we have a session tomorrow, and I've seen the slides, so I think it will be, I'm not going to go into much detail because tomorrow we have a session on financial management and accountability, and I think Ngoni really, all your questions on budgeting and alignment to, but he will touch on all of those. So I think that will be answered tomorrow. I don't want to, already give him, talk about his his presentation. The other one was Simasa. If you can just the other one was.
So the other one, I think you had briefly touched on it in your presentation. It's how can we effectively align our research goals with specific priorities and mission of potential funders to maximize our chances of securing funding.
I think I hope I've answered. I mean, you know, I've tried to touch on that. I mean, there's no clear answer, but it's you have to relook at your proposal and look at the alignment, look at the priority areas. I mean, as I said, sometimes proposals are not applicable to, you know, you don't need to apply to every funding call if you really cannot change certain aspects of your proposal that aligns to the funder. But it is that peg. That square peg in a round hole, that is what is happening. You have to adjust. You have to cut down certain things. You have to look at your methodologies. You have to look at your you know collaboration. Who are the people that you collaborate with? If it's interdisciplinary research, you know, or multidisciplinary, who are the people you can work with? What are the disciplines you want to remember? You're also suggesting a proposal is a suggestion of a project. It's a proposed project, and it can change, right? When you receive funding, and a lot of researchers don't do that. And I always tell them, when you are having when something changes after you've received the funding, it is for you to tell the funder, this has happened. You know, this is not my you know, I've looked at maybe I was doing data science and or something in digital humanities, and I've looked at maybe working with people in computer science, but no, I don't think they are, you know, the right people going into the 6 months now when we started the project. I think I will rather now work with somebody in data science, or you know, and I'm going to realign my project in a different way. Those must all be communicated to the funder. Doing it and the funder sees it in a project, in a progress report, is not going to work for them, right? So then they start asking questions. But if you're upfront and saying, no, this is how I realigned or redesigned now, this is my topic has changed slightly, you know, but it's still aligned to these objectives. My third objective is not, you know, I won't be able to manage that. You know, these are resources that are not, you can negotiate. You can negotiate after receiving the funding. So so that is an aspect. Sorry.
I am now going to share my screen. Can you hear me? Hello,
Yes, we
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. All right, and can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Francis.
All right, I'm not sure if I have to introduce myself, but just for the record, my name is Francis Kombe. I am the Chief Executive Officer for Ethi Expert, which is a non-profit company based in Pretoria, South Africa, but I'm Kenyan. So the views that I'm going to share in this presentation are largely from Kenya and East Africa, you know, generally, and not South Africa per se. So I'm going to be talking to you about ethics and compliance in research. And this is what I'm going to be covering across the, not in very systematic order, but I'm going to try to, you know, get us to understand institutional just how to ensure research integrity and navigating the ethical challenges in research. All right. Someone is able to write on slides. All right, so I think before we get started, I have this slide to just help us reflect on some of the basic, you know, procedures and issues that we probably have some experience over, you know, the period we have been in this field. And some of the things that I really want us to understand, and probably by the end of this presentation, we ought to have, you know, been able to answer regards to what are policies and guidelines. So throughout this presentation, I want us to understand what are policies and guidelines, and how do policies and guidelines differ? Are they the same? Are they different? And does that matter at all? And what role can policies and guidelines play in ethics and compliance? can policies and guidelines legally and ethically be enforced? And what systems, different fields, different institutions, and what is your role in ethics and compliance? Because at the end of the day, we have these policies and guidelines quite at a very high level, aspect. But then when it comes down to the actual practice, I need us to try to ask ourselves, what is our individual role in ensuring our practice adheres to the ethical standards and compliance? All right, so very fast, I want us to try to start unpacking this slide. And therefore, what are policies? Now, when you read the literature about policies, you understand policies are very high-level statements, very formal and high-level statements. And usually, policies are created in response to either legal requirements, governmental, regulations, in order to try to get, roles and responsibilities clearly outlined in a specific document and ensure that expectations for specific programs and tasks are well defined. Usually, within an institutional point of view, policy will be a direct reflection of the institution's strategic values, objectives, and provide a decision-making pathway in specific situations as well. Now, when you do not comply with specifics or specific policies in a given institution, that would be actually can lead to negative consequences. In other situations, it can be lead to disciplinary actions. Sometimes even people get dismissed because they have gone against specific policies within a given institution. When it comes to guidelines, we are talking about principles, rules, and usually very normative advice that are there to guide through a process or a task. They usually describe how people ought to behave or how people ought to address certain aspects within an organization. And the procedures are kind of recommendations. They also provide kind of interpretations and administrative instructions on best practices and frameworks through which people are expected to operate. Now, because there are sometimes guidelines are quite normative, they are sometimes not directly linked to any legal instruments. And because of that, they are just advice. They are not mandatory, but when you breach these guidelines, it can, maybe you have gone against certain rules in an organization. It may not have very grave consequences in as far as discipline is concerned, but within an institutional perspective, it can also put you in bad light in terms of failure to follow certain guidelines. Now, guidelines are very close to the next two slides, which are standards and procedures. While guidelines provide kind of recommendations and on how to deal with things or certain issues, standards, on the other hand, which are very common within the research enterprise, relate to quality. So they tell you what is considered acceptable levels of quality of performance, and they provide a way of maintaining competence in certain performance standards or performance practices. We are aware about the common standard operating procedures, templates that basically provide a way of how things ought to be done across board. It does not matter who is doing it. As long as you are doing that same procedure, you have to follow that step by step or one bullet after the other. There are standard operating procedures that need to apply across board. And the the idea is basically to maintain quality so that you can be, you can be sure at any one given time that everyone is doing the same, across board. Now, while standards are not necessarily linked to any legal instruments, they're very important when it comes, especially within the research enterprise. But I imagine they are important across all spheres of, production and, performances. When you breach standards, you actually undermine the quality of production or the quality of certain practices. And this, within the context of research especially, this constitutes deviation. So if you work in, for example, in the clinical trials, field, or you work in, biomedical research, when you breach certain standards, you actually are supposed to report this. There may not be any consequences, but you'll be required to report that you have deviated from what was expected of you. Depending on the level and the depth of that deviation, there could be certain consequences, including, for example, we have seen studies being, terminated because of, had severe deviation from what was proposed in the initial, stage. And this is especially important when it comes to, research ethics and as well as research integrity, which we are going to look into detail in a few minutes. But in addition to standards, one of the other components that we hear being discussed a lot in terms of compliance are issues to do with procedures. It's not so different from standards, but procedures, on the other hand, could be documents that provide step-by-step instructions of, on how to carry out particular tasks. So essentially, when you have a list of, you have a document which will be, known as standard, operating procedures, or a list of, procedures to be followed, you will basically be able to follow those steps to the desired outcome that is, expected from the description that has been given. They go hand in hand with policies and guidelines, because policies are kind of high level, as I already said. But then when you have these high level documents, how do you operationalize them on the ground? And in order to operationalize these policies and guidelines, sometimes you require a very, operational level document that clearly describes step by step on how to achieve the desired outcome. So they also sometimes describe procedures of implementing specific, as I've already said. And again, while deviating or not adhering to certain procedures may not have any, grave, impact in terms of, the individual performance of a particular staff, it also could constitute to deviation of how you are supposed to, conduct yourself, or a deviation of how you are supposed to do certain things. Picture an example of, template or standard operating procedure for conducting informed consent. Step by step, in addition to the consent form that is there, you would have to, to apply to the participant, there would be standard operating procedures on how to do the consenting process itself. And that would require a step-by-step in terms of how you introduce yourself, how you make sure you adhere to the norms and expectations of the community where you operate, how even to dress up, how to do, greetings and so forth and so forth, in addition to the actual information that you provide to the participant. And these will be the procedures that you are required to follow. If you don't follow any of these, you may not, like I have said, you may not have instant consequences in terms of, the standards, but collectively, this would, lead to, for example, deviation and failure to just adhere to certain standards. And to some level, it could actually be a breach of, integrity, depending on what task you are you're performing. All right. So having said that, having then be able to get us at least have a rough idea of what we are talking about when you're talking about policies, guidelines, and procedures. Now look at the structures that are in place, especially within research and ethics, to try to guide us on what guides researchers, and so that when we talk about compliance, then we know about what is it that we apply, we are complying to. So at the very high level, within research, we have what we call the ethical principles. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of describing what these are, but those who are in the, and I want to believe that all of us are in the research space, you will all be conversant with the ethical principles, including respect for persons or autonomy, beneficence and non-maleficence, justice, and research merit and integrity, which I've included there. So essentially, these are very high-level normative principles that ought to guide how research needs to be done in order to ensure research that is conducted is ethically sound. These are usually, referred to as universal principles because they're principles that cut across. Even though within this, field, there has been debates about how universally these principles are. But over and above, I personally believe that these are principles that, their application may differ, but the overarching principles remain more or less the same. Now, under these ethical, we also have the codes and guidelines within, research ethics. And these, again, are very normative guidelines that have been developed through, based on or with a background to some of the research go. And in order to curb those research, atrocities, there has been a lot of, effort put towards, developing guidelines and standards to ensure that people do not do the same atrocities that happened, before. And these are very common, guidelines. The Nuremberg Code, which is the first of its kind to be, to be developed following the research atrocities that happened with the, Tuskegees. Then we have the Declaration of Helsinki, Belmonte Report, from which the ethical principles are drawn from. Then we have SIOM's guidelines. We have the International Conference on Harmonization or Good Clinical Practice for those who are into clinical research. Now, I said these are very high-level normative, guidelines that provide a blueprint on how research ought to be conducted. They kind of provide the do's and don'ts, if you like, but then within different, spaces or different cultural, areas of operation, this now can also simplified and be interrogated into how can they be applied on the ground in a way that they are meaningful and they are respectful of, the kind of expectations that the community involved in research, the participants who are involved in that research, expect. And we have seen this happening a lot in terms of now, global, code of conduct and many other, communities that have gone to now reflect on how to apply these principles within a cultural, in a cultural sensitive manner. All right, so those are very high-level international guidelines that guide the conduct of research. Both the principles and the universal, the universal principles and the international guidelines that I've talked about. Now, when you come to the legal instruments, especially within now, national boundaries, usually for now, these, for these ethical principles and guidelines to even make any meaningful sense or being, to be applied in a way that has legal backing within the, countries, there are certain legal instruments that have to be developed. So in other countries, you hear the acts of parliaments. In West Africa, you would hear the presidential decrees. You will also hear about white papers that are usually developed with kind of, if you like, putting the principles or putting the guidelines now within the national legal framework, so that when you say do not do this, what law guides you or what law takes you from, enforcing what you have said. So here is a list within the, I think within the South Africa context. Here is a list of some of the that are currently available that guide the research space. So the National Health Act, Genetically Modified Organisms Act, Medicines and Related Substances Act. All these are meant to basically provide a framework on how guidelines or ethical guidelines, are supposed to be embedded within the legal framework in a given country. And they usually differ from one country to the other. We could also, if you are lucky, you could also have some national ethics frameworks. Some countries have these a lot. Not all the countries do, but at least, some countries now. So for example, the country I come from, Kenya, there is a national bioethics framework. In addition, is supposed to guide how research is supposed to be conducted in the country. So whereas the national, the Health Act is an overarching legal instrument, the bioethics framework is mainly, supposed to focus on the ethical soundness of research and how research within the country ought to be conducted in a manner that and the safety research participants. All right. So basically, generally speaking, we have the overarching international instruments or regulations, but we also, when you are, in terms of the legal instruments, when your research is attracting funding from outside of your country, you would also have to understand and more so adhere to other legal instruments from other countries. And the US is a good example. If you are applying for funding from the US, you would be expected to, to comply to the NIH federal law, which guides how federal money or funding from the US ought to be used for, research in other, in the US, also in other, countries. All right. So in addition to those legal instruments, then we have the structural systems that guide how research ought to be conducted. So these are now the kind of instruments such as, offices, legally, established offices that ought to now, provide governance and, regulate how research ought to be in certain countries. So at the very top, we have the National Health Research Ethics Committee within the, perspective of ethics. Then we have the National Health Research Authority. This usually, looks into the issues about regulatory authorities and medicine, so basically the MC, what is called Medicine Council Authority, and they have different names in different countries. Then for the National Ethics Research Ethics Council, sometimes called the National Council on Science, Technology, and Innovation, depending on which region of Africa you come from. Usually they are very, they are a regulator. In some countries, they actually review proposals, but in most countries now in Africa, they are kind of taking a policy level perspective where they are supposed to advise the government on how research is supposed to be conducted in the country. But under those, you usually have delegated powers to review research to now the institutional research ethics committees, or institutional review boards, depending on where you come from. And if you are lucky, you would have offices of research integrity. And I think in South Africa, this is becoming, common. There are few, universities now that have established offices of research integrity. But over and above that, there are also, compliance in research and ethics does not stop at the level of the Medicine Regulatory Authority and the Research Ethics Committee. There are other offices that also, guide how research ought to be conducted in terms of, procedures. And these could be research management offices. If you are lucky, you will have that in your university or institution. You would have offices that deal with grant management. You will have offices that deal with research management administration, patents management, and so forth and so forth. And these would have very clear and sometimes very demarcated roles and responsibilities on management and oversight. But also some of these roles can quite overlap in certain settings. All right. So ideally, the structure will be like what you see here on the slide. Usually, the Medicine Regulatory Authorities and the National Health Research Ethics Council would kind of fall within the same level. But the role under which they operate sometimes can have, different hierarchies. In many countries, before you are allowed to conduct research, you would have to get ethical clearance from a national, either the National Health Research Ethics Council or the delegated, where the delegated powers have been devolved to, which will be the Institutional Ethics Committee or the Research Ethics Committee. Now, if you are doing clinical research, then once you have that clearance, you would have to submit your proposal again together with that clearance to the Medicine Regulatory Authority, who would either give you clearance or they would give you, a permit, or a license, depending on what you are doing. So institutional ethics review committees, which now have the powers of the National Ethics Review, the National Health Research Ethics Councils have been delegated to, would then provide the ethical approval. Some of these systems are parallel depending on where you come from. So in Kenya, for example, you would have ethical clearance before you get clearance from the Medicine Regulatory Authority. There are other countries where you have to submit to both. And then, once you have clearance from one, you have to wait for the clearance from the other before your research commences. But in many countries that I have been to, both in West Africa, some parts of Southern Africa and East Africa, this will be the process here where you get ethical clearance and then you submit that ethical clearance to the Medicine Regulatory Authority. That gives you the regulatory clearance before you start conducting your data. Across the board, if you are lucky, as I said, you have the Office of Research Integrity. The Office of Research Integrity wouldn't necessarily give you any kind of clearance, but there would be the office that would essentially be on the lookout to see how you apply the, what you promised to do on the ground. It could be, the way the way you conduct yourself with other researchers, the way you conduct yourself with, the participants, the way you conduct yourself in terms of how you deal with the data. So across board, right from conception of your research all the way to the end of your research, usually the Office of Integrity would have a role to play in terms of just if they were to oversee, actively, they would have a role to play. But usually the Office of Research Integrity does not have a very active, role in terms of oversight. They would have a passive role in terms of waiting for any, anything that is reported for them to take over and follow up. If you are lucky, you would have an office that is proactive and therefore would disseminate information, would, have programs running. But largely, they do not give any kind of permission for you to conduct your research. What many institutions do not realize, and many researchers do not realize though, is although these are the main kind of structures that really oversight our research, either before and even after, approval has been given, there are many offices that also determine our compliance. So for example, offices to do with contracts and management, if you do not have an office, or if the office is not efficient, that can affect your compliance in terms of how you conduct yourself with other partners who come into partnership with you. Offices that have to do with community engagement, offices to do with communication, offices that guide publication, procurement. Procurement is extremely important. Of course, human resource and finance. All these offices, in one way or another, if they are not operating efficiently, can affect a researcher's ability to comply. Picture a situation where your research has been approved, you have gotten the clearance, and then the procurement office takes forever to provide certain equipment that you require to conduct your research. Once your time has been eaten up, then the equipment is there, you will find yourself rushing against time. And when you rush against time, a lot of things can happen on the ground. So every office that I have listed here, and I'm sure there are any others that are not here, they one way or another can affect the way researchers comply to the existing requirements, the legal and ethical structures and policies on the ground. So in our setting, therefore, it is important for us to understand, especially those who are managing research management and administration. It is important to step back and think, how do we have a systems, or do we have systems in our spaces, in our universities, in our research institutions that can be able to ascertain with a reasonable level of certainty what happens in the field, especially post-approval, because this is important. When it comes to compliance, this is important. Do we have systems in place? Do we have structures in place that have the capacity to especially understand what is happening post-approval? What happens in the lab? Sometimes we get research being approved, it's gonna happen in the lab, but we able to know what's happening there? What happens to the management of funds? Because this is important in terms of compliance. Okay, what happens with the data management and sharing, authorship, publication, research findings? All these are important. And what are the legal and moral or ethical obligations and mandate of the different institutions? This is important. And most importantly, what should researchers then do, in order to comply? I have looked at two different overarching, areas. So the first one is the moral standards. Researchers ought to adhere to the moral standards, which I already talked about. Then we also have the professional standards, and these are the principles that are taken from the Singapore Statement of Research Integrity. So the one aspect is adhering to ethical, standards, and the other one is adhering to, research integrity. And collectively, if researchers are able to meet all this, then they are in the space where we can say they are conducting responsible research, or they are adhering to responsible conduct of research. And failure to do this basically leads to what we can say unethical practices, because there will be exploitation, there will be unavoidable or avoidable risks and harm, and issues to do with ethics dumping. At the research integrity space, we can then start querying about the validity of the research that is happening, replicability, trustworthiness, and even wastage of public funds, and just the implication of that in research and discovery. Now, if this happens, then we have what we call reproducibility crisis or an ethical research, depending on which area we're looking at. So in terms of promoting the good means we need to look at, this as a very holistic approach where research, ethical and responsible behaviors are influenced by many factors, including the beliefs, the ethical beliefs and values, the culture in those institutions, the structures at those institutions where we operate, but also the external factors, including the legal frameworks, the government regulations, and even external funders who also influence the ethical behaviors that researchers also adhere to. So in summary, you could say institutional systems must strengthen ethical values and structures. They also must be in sync with the legal frameworks, which they are easily, they're overarching, but also easily enforceable, and they must shape the institutional policies and guidelines. And most importantly, to understand is that organizations are a part of a larger community. With the community that is involved, which must also be put into considerations, funders, and also the government, regulations that also can play a role in the ethical, responsibilities of researchers. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that research compliance and oversight is a collective responsibility. There are many factors and many, issues that ought to be, put into consideration, but it is a collective responsibility for each one of us, the individuals, the institutions, and also the external factors. Systems, structures, and policies, therefore, must speak to each other. You can't operate in silos, okay? And especially when we talk about this from the perspective of compliance, we must therefore understand that we cannot ever have adequate capacity to policy everybody. And therefore, as a regulator, you may want to think about how can you infuse some sense of self-regulation for those that you are supposed to oversight, so that there is some sense of self-regulation. And this is where research integrity comes about. And a vibrant research ecosystem, therefore, is critical. We must always be able to reflect, be able to adjust our systems in order to respond to the existing, practices, to respond to what is happening in the field. Compliance without overly constraining is critical. Sometimes compliance can be looked at as a bottleneck to research, and that again can be a negative implication. And therefore, we need to think about compliance as a holistic approach that brings together all the stakeholders. All the stakeholders must understand the value of complying to the existing rules, policies, and regulations. And that way, then we can be able to create strong leadership across all levels. We can be able to nurture what I call self-regulations, and there must also be coherence. We must endeavor to reach coherence between what is written, what are the legal instruments that I talked about, what is said, and finally, what is done. Because it is so nice sometimes to have very nice policies, instruments at the very high level, but then when you come on the ground, the things that happen there are very wanting. So we must endeavor to synchronize all this so that there's compliance, good systems for compliance, but the compliance also leads to best practice on the ground. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for having me. I don't know if there's time for questions, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Francis. I'm not sure if we're going to have time for questions. We're already over time. Yeah, we are out of time for questions, but what we will do is we will give everyone a short break. We will, after coming a 10-minute break, after coming from the break, we will just go into look at a little case study. We will go into into breakaway groups, discuss it for a few minutes. So, and then come back and just talk about it. And then we will end the session through a Q&A session afterwards. So let me just, I'm going to just share my, Francis, can you stop sharing? Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen for the case study that you will look at in your breakaway session. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you all back here at around 11:45. Thank you.
Yolanda, can I excuse myself, or do I have to remain?
Yes, thanks, Francis. Thanks for the presentation. It was really insightful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
We'll just now listen for about 10 minutes, people's views, somebody that want to share what have been discussed in the breakaway sessions or breakout rooms. I think there was a lot of interesting discussions, and yeah, if you just want to get, share a few pointers, and that is just for the next 10 minutes, and then we will go into a Q&A session. Anybody willing to...
Yolanda?
Yes,
I'm
Ahmed?
sorry to interrupt. We have not closed the rooms yet. Can I
okay.
close them and pull everyone in?
Okay. Oh.
I'm gonna close it now, and then it'll take 60 seconds before it pulls everyone into the main
Okay,
room.
sorry. Okay.
I'm starting that now, so give it 60 seconds, and everyone will be back
Okay.
here. Okay.
Okay, welcome back. I was already giving instructions in the plenary, and I was just told that not all the rooms are closed. Just to say that we are running the session in different parts. I mean, I'm sitting in Johannesburg, Armand and everyone else is sitting in Pretoria. Kaz, is somewhere else. So we're all trying to coordinate ourselves as well. Being in different locations. So I think that was those were very interesting discussions that we had, and a lot of things came up. I mean, it's just unfortunate we can't have more time, but if there's a few, we will just take a few discussion points, say for the next 10 minutes, and then and then we will go into the last session after that. So anybody that's willing to go and just give a few points that has been that we'll discuss in the breakout room.
Thanks, Yolanda. There's a lady, one of our colleagues in our breakaway room that elected to give feedback. Thanks.
Okay. So the people that elected, we also had somebody that
Thank you, Nachiza.
Okay. The people that are elected to give feedback. The person
From our room,
oh,
sorry, from our room, it's Nachiza Malaki. I'm not sure if I pronounce her name correctly. Please I apologize if I'm not, but Malaki.
Armand, can you
So
allow
please.
Nsisa to unmute herself?
They should be able to unmute themselves. Just try again.
Now I'm able to mute myself. Good afternoon,
Okay.
everyone.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It was very curious to meet my room 2 session group. In our room, we discussed about the scenario, and the following are the points that we came out with to explain on how we're going to handle that scenario. I think everyone remember what was the scenario. All right.
Yes.
The first thing on the issue of over budgeting and under budgeting, we saw that in order to make effective implementation of the project, we need to conduct something we call budget reallocation. Budget reallocation is when you make a thorough analysis on your budget and see where you can make necessary adjustments on the budget line items. Sometimes you can do budget edit, which means it's within the activity. Maybe some items have been under budgeted or budgeted, but sometimes you can do the total reallocation, which means you move funds from one activity to another activity. But sometimes you can also postpone activities in this financial year and that financial year. But the main factor that will allow you to do all these things are two things. One, the institutional processes and the budget of the budget, if they may allow, but also the procedures and processes of the fund, if may allow. So before doing anything, you need to share this analysis and the concept and present it to the funder, and second to the institution, so that you comply with all the necessary requirements for budget reallocation. The other thing is on the strong time and the proactive conduct of monitoring and evaluation of our project activities. That's when you will see and forecast all those delays and unforeseen things that may make the project not to be effective and efficient, or may be delayed. Therefore, monitoring and evaluation is very important component in order to monitor the progress and successful implementation of the project. But also the third thing was on if it comes in that the funder introduces new component that was not in the contract. And the component was about data sharing, if I remember. So on that, we saw that nothing is impossible. It's better you sit together, the institution, the key implementers in the institution, and the funder.
Okay, sorry, maybe somebody was talking. Can you continue? Okay. I'm not hearing. People are saying people are saying that their network is bad and things. Yeah. So maybe we can just take one more group. I think we're going over time.
Can I?
Yolanda, sorry,
Can
we
I
don't
give
don't have any
feedback from my
time.
group?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead with the.
Florence, you're on mute. Do you want to unmute and go ahead with your group report back?
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute. Sorry.
I think there's happened a lot.
Budget reallocation. We agreed that we seek approval from the funders and the local approval body to allow reallocation of the budget to various sections of the project, so that to eliminate the discrepancies. After approval has been given, then we should inform the team about the changes of the budget, so that we are all together in agreement of the changes that have been proposed. About the second issue of collaboration management, we have given proposals of having a meeting with the struggling institution to identify where the problem is and find a common and agreeable solution on the way forward in helping solve the issues, so that the institution, the other struggling institution, is not left behind. We also gave a proposal that each and every institution should have a link person, which means the institution should appoint a link person to the other to the research team, so that we get first-hand information and be able to assist whenever there is a crisis in time, and not waiting for things to go out of hand, for better collaboration. And for this point, we also encourage communication among the research team. Frequent communication can be monthly, can be weekly, can be depending on the activities being carried out. We agree on when to meet and give feedback on the process, so that we identify the stumbling blocks early in time. And we encourage sharing of information, open sharing of information, data, and materials whenever possible. The third point, which was about the new requirement by the funder, we recommended that there should be training on the new requirement, and we suggested reading the guidelines that govern the requirement by the funder. After familiarizing ourselves with the requirement governing the new requirement, we seek approval from relevant authorities that will give us approval for sharing data, because there are some institutions or some countries that do not allow sharing of some kind of data. After getting approval, we have to adjust, make needs adjustment, engage in data management plan, having a specialist on board, and build a capacity within the team by training them on the new requirement. And we also suggest review the requirements with regards to data sharing. Thank you. That's all, Yolanda.
Thank you for that. I'm talking and I'm on mute. I think basically things has been touched by the other group. I'm sorry about the timing issue. We're trying to stick to time and not eat into your lunchtime, in your places or where you and your other engagements. So we're trying to stick to time. I have put something in the chat to say that these challenges for each of these challenges, you have to maintain proactive communication with both your funder and the research team. Encourage flexibility, creativity, and strategic planning will allow you to manage these issues effectively, ensuring the project stays on track and meet the funder's expectation. These solutions also enhance your role as a research administrator by fostering strong collaboration and compliance practices within funded projects. I mean, we are all in the research administrator space, or we are in we are ourselves researchers, academics working in the research funding institutions, and so we know these are the challenges that we all face every time, just in different aspects. So as a funder, the reporting requirements are not met, the compliance requirements. As an administrator, the frustration of getting the reports or keeping research projects on track and interacting with the researchers. And as the researchers is managing all, and the PIs and the collaborators are managing all these things together. So these are issues, and I think important issues. Now the session is open. We will maybe go over. We will make this a 10-minute session. Sorry that we can't make it longer. Maybe go over 5 minutes of the time. Is there any questions from the team? Any comments that you would like to make about this first day? Tomorrow it will be even more interesting. But any comments, any questions, anyone that would want to share with us about this test? And then we can also take your critique into consideration, because I mean it's not and see how we can improve tomorrow. Anybody? Somebody's not hearing me, but I can others hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes.
Yolanda.
hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Comments that I am from a funder, and I've found the presentations to be very informative, very good, very accurate, and I appreciated the diversity of the presenters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nosisa. Anybody else?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Mamo Johannes from Ethiopia.
Yes.
Just I want to talk about time arrangement, because our time is I think is different from time. So please try to arrange the time tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, we're trying to, we will try to stick to times. We have tried to manage the time. I mean, the program was supposed to end at 12 South African time. I don't know about your time. I mean, we have, and I asked if you can just go over over time by 5 minutes, because we are just taking some comments. This is at the end of the program for today. But tomorrow we'll hope to manage time better than we did today. Thank you for that comment. Any other person that want to maybe make a comment or a suggestion to us?
Just to say that it was a beautiful presentation. Thanks for the presenters.
Thank you for that.
I have to say also time concern. Stick please on time for the tomorrow, please.
Thank you. We will try our utmost best. I mean, but this is running how the issues that we have running online sessions. And yeah, so we will just try and do that. We will meet after this just to discuss those issues.
Okay, and then inform us if there are any rearrangements, please inform us.
Arrangements like what, such as
for example, in the timing, maybe if you are going to start in the very early morning by tomorrow, or like that.
Okay. I think we will stick to the time we started today, and we will just try and manage the the sessions and the speakers. We will the presenters, because tomorrow we have quite a few different a variety of presenters. We will just ask them to stick to their time. This information.
Sorry, this is, I think, to our colleagues, because we are in different countries. When you are logging in, please check the time that has been given. Which country? Okay. For example, South African timing is different from East Africa timing, which is different from West Africa. So if it is said maybe 12:30 South African time, then you adjust according to your timing in your country. Otherwise, you might be here too early or too late. And you think that the program started early or too late. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. Please.
All right.
I think
All right.
we will I will ask SARIMA to just send out that timing issue to all the participants. Yeah, it is a timing difference between where we all at.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Yolanda. I just want to say, according to my time, it's actually 12:29. So I don't know. I was a bit confused when we are saying we've gone over time.
Yeah, I think that what people are saying, it's a difference in time zones. Yeah, we are,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is actually the
Yes, Yolanda.
Jean-Pierre?
Yeah, thank you so very much. But next time, please consider those in West Africa, because to be here at 8, I had to wake up at 5 o'clock and be at the office at 6. 6 o'clock here is 8 o'clock in South Africa. And I guess this is why most of our research managers did not really join this event. So next time, please add up 1 or 2 hours so that the West African research managers can join. Thank you.
Yes, I think we overlooked the time differences. So really, yeah, we will consider that next time, and maybe have different or have the session in different. So for institutions in West Africa, have different sessions. Maybe the training programs at different times, so that because we all joined at the same time. Obviously, there's vast differences. Okay, any final comments, questions, anything that's
I just want to jump in and add that we once ran something for 11 countries across the world with vast time differences, and the best time for next time was the time between 12 p.m. and 4. Unfortunately, if we had to include China, there were 7 hours apart, so it would be too late for them, but that seemed to have been the best time.
okay. Thanks for that suggestion, Nosisa. Okay, thanks to everyone. Thanks for participating in the discussion. Please join us again tomorrow. Tomorrow will be, there will be excellent presentations. You will learn a lot. And I hope to see everyone 9 o'clock South African time. I don't know. It's different. East Africa 1 hour later. Yeah, maybe West Africa. I don't know how many hours earlier. Yeah. So yeah, we will just yeah, adjust late next time. But thanks for coming today, and I'll see you all tomorrow.